And greetings and welcome to another live broadcast of AST Speaks Building a New Legacy. This is your host, Queen Mother Dr. Chinzira of AST Speaks Enterprises and Media Consultant, alongside Anu, Parent Legacy, and much more. So let me just give a moment of reflection to all of our ancestors, all of our elders who have really contributed to these themes that we're going to discuss today. Media as well. Always looking at what's happening internationally that's supporting our shared humanity, those conversations around human rights and our international engagements. I'm very honored, very privileged to be able to share with our viewers as well as our listeners today that AST Speaks Building a New Legacy is really engaged in broadcasts that are interdisciplinary and transcultural, that allows for our media broadcast content to share ankhversations, living conversations, actions, and perspectives around global affairs and movements in the Caribbean, Africa, Europe, the Americas, and the entire global community. For those persons that are not familiar, you can easily go to AST Speaks, AST SPEAKS, at YouTube. You can also look for us on Facebook, as well as in some of the other Instagram. You can just send us an email. But I wanted to just take a moment to really properly and respectfully introduce our illustrious guest. Our illustrious guest today is Dr. Gamal Gorke Nkrumah. Dr. Nkrumah, and we'll say Dr. Gamal Nkrumah so we do not get any misunderstandings with people feeling that we're speaking to the Honorable Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, although Dr. Gamal is his son, and we're excited about that. And Dr. Gamal Nkrumah is a Pan-Africanist who has worked as an editor of the International Affairs section of the Al-Akram weekly newspaper in Cairo, Egypt. As the eldest son of the Honorable Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, and his wife, Fatia Nkrumah, Dr. Gamal has inherited a very rich legacy of political, socioeconomic, educational, and cultural heritage. Dr. Gamal Nkrumah earned his doctorate in political science from the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, and also holds a master's degree from the University of Sussex. With over 20 years of experience as a political journalist at Al-Akram Weekly, he has made significant contributions to the field of journalism and related interdisciplinary studies. Dr. Nkrumah is bilingual in English and Arabic, which makes this conversation very rich as well. And Dr. Gamal Nkrumah writes extensively on African and international affairs and global publications. In addition to his journalistic endeavors and expertise as part of his profession, he is working on a novel set against the backdrop of the rich ancestral legacy of ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, reflecting his deep interest in the historical and cultural dynamics of the African continent, people, and human civilization. And with that, I'd like to welcome to AST Speaks Building a New Legacy broadcast, Dr. Gamal G. Nkrumah. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Gamal Nkrumah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, we're excited. So let's start at the beginning, because we've been having this conversation off air for quite a while, and I'd like for us to just go right inside of this interview. Would you please share some of your primary areas of interest? What moved you to become a journalist and a human rights advocate, Dr. Gamal?
I studied politics and economics in London, School of Oriental and African Studies in London, and
Wonderful.
the LSE, London School of Economics. And my degree was both economics and politics.
Beautiful.
And from there started my academic interest in Africa and in the African world. And then I also started to read my own father's books, Kwame Nkrumah, and I was greatly influenced by his writing, and I was conscious of the fact that Kwame Nkrumah started at some point of being a journalist like myself. So I was following in the footsteps of my father, Kwame Nkrumah.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Gamal, because that was exactly what I was going to ask you was, how has the legacy, the great legacy, the legacy that persons are still admiring beyond words of your honorable father, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And again, for persons that may not be familiar, president of the first independent Republic of Ghana. I think it's important. How did your life work change? What were the things that you would like to share with the viewers? Was there a particular book by your father that influenced you? Was it all of them? Was it growing up in that type of a household? Just share with us some of that experience, Dr. Gamal.
I read my father's books. I read my father's books extensively, and I was very influenced by the writings of my father, Kwame Nkrumah. I read Africa Must Unite, which is the book I adore, Africa Must Unite. I've also read The Challenge of the Congo and also his other books and writings.
Thank you for sharing that. Because that lets us go into the question, some of the other questions around being a journalist. What are the key issues that are being prioritized in media? And are there things that are different that you feel journalists should be prioritizing? Like what's important to you as a journalist?
Writing in Al-Ahram Weekly, which is the premier English language publication in Egypt and the Arab world, I've learned a lot from my experience in Al-Ahram Weekly, because I write primarily on African and Arab affairs, but in the English language, which is not the language most commonly spoken in this part of the world. The Arabic language is the main language of the area. But I was fortunate to write in the English language publication of that newspaper. And I learned a great deal and traveled extensively in Africa and the Middle East.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Gamal. And could you share with us some of the countries that you have traveled to in Africa as a journalist, and some of the the ideas, the themes, like were you covering things in Somalia or the Congo or South Africa or to Chad or West Africa? If you don't mind sharing with us some of those experiences and how it helped you to be able to share the vision, the priorities that you like.
I covered extensively the area of the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, and countries of that region. And I was helped by the fact that I spoke Arabic language as my first language. So I was able to reach out to the people of that region, the Horn of Africa, and write extensively about that area. Also, I had the pleasure and honor of visiting Ethiopia and Somalia, as well as Kenya and Uganda. So this enriched my experience and knowledge of the area, especially the Nile Valley countries in Africa.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And when you hear the term human rights, being that you are a journalist, you are also a Pan-Africanist, you are an advocate for human rights, what is your perspective? What do you wish for us to make a highlight when it comes to human rights and the different affairs that you've been reporting on, writing about? Please share that with us. How do you see our role in affairs dealing with human rights and social justice?
Well, I had the privilege and honor of meeting and interviewing several heads of states and first ladies in the region, including the first Egyptian woman, First Lady Jihan Al Sadat, the wife of Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt. I also met and interviewed Al-Mahdi family, Miriam Al-Mahdi, who's a daughter of the Sudanese leader at the time, Sadiq Al-Mahdi. And I met many leaders and many women leaders in the area, including wives of heads of states and government in the Nile Valley countries, from Uganda to Sudan and Ethiopia and Egypt, of course.
Of course, of course. Thank you so much for sharing that, because this year marks the 20th anniversary since the formation of the African Union, ECOSOC, as a body. It also marks, and they've had convenings in Accra, Ghana, as recently as just this past week. This is also the 20th anniversary, particularly in September of 2024, of the Caribbean
Yes.
Pan-African.
Can you repeat of the question, please?
Yes. The question is really around your involvement, your activism around human rights, which you've shared with us some of the interviews that you've hosted with heads of state and lady heads of state. And we'd like for you to speak to any other actions that are connected, whether it's to the African Union, to Caribbean Pan-African Network, CARICOM, because our focus is also on reconnecting. What are we doing? For example, what are you doing in Egypt and Kemet? And how does that relate and tie to what we're doing in the 48 contiguous US, the Caribbean, Central America? So we make this global. And it could be anywhere, any action, any area that you would like to share with us, Dr. Gamal. That's very open for you. You know, if you want to talk about your family's legacy, we welcome that. If you'd like to talk about the work that you're writing, we welcome that.
I was very fortunate in meeting many artists and musicians, ranging from Miriam Makeba of South Africa and to many other leading artists like Warda in Algeria, the Algerian singer, who, when she first came to Egypt, she could not speak a word of Arabic because of the French colonialism in Algeria. And she learned Arabic when she came to Egypt and settled here. And some of her most wonderful, beautiful songs were in Arabic after she learned to speak the Arabic language. So I was very fortunate in meeting many, not just politicians, but also artists and field of music and arts.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for sharing that, because that's what we were looking forward to hearing with you. And what would be your, if you don't have one message, I can hear you're speaking as a journalist, as a Pan-Africanist, as a son of one of our greatest heroes and leaders in the 20th century for sure, the Honorable Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, but also just as a person that continues to be an advocate for human rights. Share with us any, I don't call them closing words, I don't call them final words, just share with us actionable deliverables that you would like to share with our viewers and our listeners. Again, this is coming solely from your perspective, and we would love to hear what are the calls for action that you suggest? What are the things you'd like to see us moving forward from this day with moving forward?
I believe that the empowerment of women in politics and economics in Africa is of vital importance. I personally, as a man, I've always been conscious of the fact that I, as a man, must cover and give coverage to women leaders in Africa and the African world. And I've been very fortunate to meet many African women leaders, including my own sister, Samia Nkrumah, and other leaders in Africa, all over in Southern Africa, Northern Africa, East and West Africa. And I was very impressed by the caliber of African women leaders in Africa. And I treasure the experience of meeting with the women leaders in Africa and talking to them.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that you actually cherish meeting the women leaders of Africa. That means a lot to many of the women that are in the forefront of some of these efforts and sometimes feel that we're marginalized. So I'm very grateful that you were able to even offer that, Dr. Gamal, because sometimes while we may say African women lead, and there's been a whole thrust of making sure there's equitable engagement with our African women, sometimes it's not practiced. So we're very thankful for you highlighting that and a voice of engagement. Not everyone is comfortable like that. So if there's anything else you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners, the floor is yours. Whatever you'd like to share, Dr. Gamal.
Yeah, some of the most interesting women leaders I met in Africa, and including my own sister, Samia Nkrumah, and Winnie Mandela, and of South Africa, and many, there's also women musicians like the late Miriam Makeba of Azania, South Africa. She was one of my great inspiration, and I had the honor of meeting her in person and interviewing her, and I published the interview of this great African musician, Miriam Makeba of Azania, South Africa.
Wonderful. Well, we want to thank you for just sharing what you've shared with us. We hope that the team of Al Akram Weekly, I'm glad that you highlighted that that is a publication that is one of the only English presented, translated publications in Cairo.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to reach out to the public you represent.
And we're grateful. We know we're having some internet connectivity issues, but we want to thank you, Dr. Gamal G. Nkrumah, journalist, Pan-Africanist, human rights advocate, and the eldest son of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and Madame Fatia Nkrumah. I want to thank you for being able to join us all the way from Cairo and Kemet in Egypt today, and we look forward to having you join us in the very near future. Thank you again, Dr. Gamal.
Thank you. I should be thankful to you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much for everything.
We are very thankful for you as well, and you're most welcome. And we look forward to doing it again. And as we say to our audience, we want to thank listening to AST Speaks, a new legacy. We're actually building a new legacy. Our guest this afternoon, evening for some, has been Dr. Gamal G. Nkrumah. We encourage you, if you have comments, questions, suggestions, recommendations, please email us at astspeaks@gmail.com or place your comments right inside of our YouTube page by this video. If it's something you learned, let us know. If it's something you'd like to share with us so that we can expand our broadcasting, please do so. And make sure you put in nice clicks in terms of us being able to get powerful guests that give us information and that are still living amongst us, like Dr. Gamal G. Nkrumah. And with that, we say, culture heals humanity, land is our foundation, and spiritual harmony unifies us. We encourage you to stay tuned, stay with us, and keep living a purpose in all of the work that you engage in so that we can really bring it to the next level. Live a purpose, live well. Thank you again. Freedom, we need freedom. Oh yes, I want freedom. I want freedom. Freedom. Woo! Have a purpose in all you do. Just make sure that your purpose is true. Have a purpose in this here life, so your life ain't full of stray. Stay tuned for the next broadcast. Live a purpose every day, so we can live in joy. Building a new legacy. I have a purpose in all you do. Just make sure your life is true.